Hello, everyone. Welcome to Miami Beach Urban Studios live art talk with FIU alumni Orlando Estrada. I am Colette Mello, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, the City of Miami Beach Department of Tourism and Office of Cultural Affairs, for their continued support for FIU Miami Beach Urban Studios. Orlando Estrada is an interdisciplinary artist based in Miami and New York. His multimedia works include sculpture, painting, 3D printing, installation, and performance. His work intersects metaphysical practices, queer theory, and humankind's relationship to nature. He has exhibited internationally and nationally. He has curated an exhibition at the Dina Mitrani Gallery and had an exhibition at the David Castillo Gallery, both in Miami, the Grace Exhibition Space in New York, Pioneer Works in Brooklyn, as well as the CDMX in Mexico. In addition, Orlando's research on Miami is part of the Bass Fisher Invitational Weird Miami Tour, titled American Dream Monster, a macabre tour of America's tropic. His current installation, The Infinite Vision in the Ethereal America, excuse me, I lost my script. His current installation, The Infinite Vision in the Ethereal Rainbow Swarming Behind My Eyelids, Reveal a Beacon, is currently on view on Miami Beach by appointment through July 23rd, which is part of the Miami Beach Open House Residency Program and is presented by Bass Fisher Invitational and Bridge Initiative as part of their collaborative project, Waterproof Miami. Orlando Estrada was an international fellow with the prestigious Apex Art Organization and traveled to Seoul, South Korea for the residency. In addition, he is part of the Fountainhead Residency Program in Miami and held an artist residency at the Bruce High Quality Foundation in Brooklyn. Orlando Estrada earned his BFA from Florida International University and his MFA from the University of Florida. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that if you have any comments or questions, to make them through the chat function, and they will come to me directly, and I will pose a question to Orlando at the end of his presentation. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Orlando Estrada. Hi, Orlando.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Colette, for introducing me. I think that maybe we should just get right into it. I'm gonna share my screen. And now I'm gonna go into presentation mode. All right, that should be it. Okay, so hi, my name is Orlando Estrada. I'm a visual artist. I'm based between Miami and New York City. And I kind of want to get started with just giving you an artist statement. Working across all mediums, Estrada analyzes and remixes societal metanarratives through the lens of queer theory, mysticism, and science fiction. My sculptural landscapes depict dreamlike terrains using an experimental language of combining both natural and man-made materials. Using practical construction, upcycled consumer waste, and 3D printing technology, unconventional art materials are transformed into power objects, elevating craft to the realm of the sacred. Charged with both childlike naivety and deep philosophical gravity, my talismanic works conjure up a mystic allure, telling haunting fairy tales filled with imperiled beauty and frenzied optimism. So that's just a tad bit about myself and my practice. But for this talk, I'm going to focus on two projects that I recently did. Both were collaborations with BFI Miami and with Bridge Initiative. So the first one was titled Dear Miami, and this was a billboard installation. It opened, I guess, in September of 2020, and it was on view until the elections. So yeah, this was a billboard which I created a sculptural altar and then had it photographed and blown up into a big 18 by 48 foot billboard. The location for the billboard was also symbolically important to the meaning of the piece. It was located along the C4 Canal, which is right by Miami International Airport, also off of State Road 112. And that happens to be the current saltwater intrusion line, where saltwater is intercepting our canal system and mixing with fresh water, which has negative effects for local ecosystems. The text on the piece reads, "Miami is drowning, where will we go?" So the billboard is supposed to raise awareness about the impending climate crisis that Miami will be facing if we don't soon make some radical changes. I was interested in the idea of climate refugees and people, specifically people from the city of Miami, being displaced by rising water levels. So the piece was inspired by this altarpiece by Hieronymus Bosch. He was a Dutch painter born in the Netherlands. And I guess this piece kind of has a legendary status amongst, I guess, art nerds, just because it's, first of all, just gorgeous. And second of all, I'm really attracted to the narrative quality of it. So the piece is divided into 3 panels, like a traditional altarpiece, and it reads left to right in a linear narrative. So the first panel on the right depicts the Garden of Eden from the Bible, with Adam and Eve and Jesus Christ in this idyllic landscape. The middle panel represents planet Earth, and all this debauchery and, as you can see in the painting. And then the right is a hellscape, which shows civilization declining into horror. No one really, it's contested what the intentions of the painting were, but because of the graphic imagery in the piece, it was never actually shown in a church. It's believed that it was commissioned for a private patron of the artist. And so this is my piece. And on the right, you see all these kind of idyllic houses similar to the altarpiece by Hieronymus Bosch. In the center, there's this imposing figure with her arms outstretched, hugging this landscape. And on the right, you see this futuristic, dystopic vision of what could happen to the city if we experience some kind of cataclysmic change. I think what was really interesting or exciting for me about being asked to do this project is that I actually graduated from FIU with a concentration in photography. And it was in my master's program that I made this transition into becoming more of a sculptural artist. When I first started at UF, there was a huge renovation to the photo department, and I couldn't access a darkroom for a year. And so because of this, it inspired me to take all my ideas and make them through sculpture. Also, I'm really interested in transformation, transformation of material, conceptual transformation. And so the idea of creating something as a sculpture and then transferring it through photography into a 2-dimensional image, it kind of created this doubling in concept and form. So that was Dear Miami, and we were all really excited about how the piece was received and how it all transpired. And so for my physical exhibition with inside of like a proper gallery space with BFI, I decided to kind of make it a continuation of the ideas that were in the billboard. And so the title is "The Infinite Vision in the Ethereal Rainbows Swarming Behind My Eyelids Reveals a Beacon." The exhibition is currently open. You can go see it until July 23rd. Yeah, so this is a big installation view of it. On the left and right, you see two paintings that were made in the process of creating the large central sculpture. The central sculpture is called Tiered Panorama. And here I have a quick video of it, which gives you a better idea. So here's a detail of the piece. And as you can see from the video, the piece is animated. It's titled Tiered Panorama because there's two levels. There's the part that sits on the floor and is stationary, and then there's the upper tier which rotates. And from making this altarpiece panoramic image for the billboard, I thought that it would be really beautiful to take this concept a step further and actually make an animated piece. And the simplest way to do that was really just to make something that rotates. I guess you really have to see the piece in person to get the full effect of it. It's completely mesmerizing and sort of hypnotic, but the piece for me is a shrine to the city of Miami, and it functions almost as an altar of sorts. And it's really my translation of the idea of what an altar can be. The way that I made the piece was that there are several different material systems that all intersect, and it's kind of the basis for my practice. I have 3D printed objects that are made from found files on open source platforms. Many designers and artists just like to, create 3D models and share them online. And so that's how I collect the pieces that I 3D print and incorporate into the works. So right here in the front of the image, you can see there's this white Vitruvian man. There's also Greek amphoras, there's skulls, there's women in yoga poses. In addition to this, I also have real found objects. They're kind of hard to see in these details, but there's like Red Bull cans, there's keys, there's real stones, there's bones, there's all different kinds of actual found objects, which as part of my practice, I just collect things to use in sculptures. And then there's also these things that are made from my own hand, excuse me. As you can see, like the little houses, as well as the flames. And so these things I make from recycled materials that come into my life in many different ways. These particular objects were made from paper waste that came into my home during the first COVID shutdown in New York City during the pandemic. So over the course of the year leading up to the exhibition, I was cutting and folding and creating all the little bits and pieces that ended up in the actual in the piece. Here's another detail. And this piece takes its title and inspiration from the panorama of the city of New York at the Queens Museum. It's on permanent display, and it's a massive room-size installation that was created by a team of over 100 architects. and it was commissioned by Robert Moses for the 1964 World's Fair. What's inspiring to me about this piece is that periodically all the lights in the room go dark and a black light turns on and the whole city glows. So it goes from this daytime view of the city to a nightscape. Also, a huge inspiration for this piece, Tiered Panorama, is Epcot Center, Walt Disney's vision of the future. Epcot stands for Experimental Prototype City of Tomorrow. And the idea to actually make a circular island-like panorama came from this original design by Walt Disney. I'm also inspired just by like Disney's dark rides. I think they're some of the most beautiful and gorgeous and mesmerizing installation artworks that exist in the planet. And then finally, another inspiration for the work actually comes from my own meditative practice. So I use tarot cards both as an inspiration to create artworks and also just as a personal practice. So the idea of creating this beacon within the shrine to the city of Miami, it's supposed to symbolize a moment of enlightenment. And that's also what the tarot card from the Rider-Waite Tarot represents. It's supposed to be a moment of cataclysmic change. And so with my piece, I kind of wanted to create this this altar that brings more awareness to these really important issues, because Miami is, to me, sort of the canary in the coal mine for climate change. We're going to be one of the first major cities globally that has to contend with real issues that come with rising sea levels. Also, it's interesting, the Rider-Waite Tarot deck is illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith, and her practice for creating paintings also kind of mimics mine. She also had a deep meditative practice, and it was through meditations that she came up with the visions for the tarot cards, which she then translated into paintings. And also for me, just the tarot cards in general, they represent a lot of universal archetypes that can be used in creating all kinds of narratives and stories. So I find it kind of this endless source of inspiration. And so my vision that I had, that I really want to, that I wanted to create the tiered panorama with, was the idea of plastics and geological time. And I think that you have to see the piece in person to really to get the sense of the plasticity of the actual materials. The foundation of the piece is made out of spray foam. I can go back a few slides. Oh, no, I'm going forward. The actual foundation of the piece is made out of spray foam. All the 3D printed objects are made out of plastic. There's a lot of hot glue that holds together the tower of the beacon. And so in addition to creating kind of just this piece that is supposed to invoke some kind of progress within our community towards having a more ecologically centered philosophy, I wanted to talk about my own personal interest in how our use of plastics, which are petroleum-based products, are going to have an actual geological impact in the future as time goes on. You know, the Earth's crust creates strata, which is basically all the fossil layers of the Earth all compounded together. And so I thought it was very interesting that the creation of plastics is made from mining petroleum. So we're literally taking fossil waste from the past, we're bringing it up to the surface of the Earth, And now what we will see in the future is this actual layer where you can see the demented nature of what we're doing actually manifest in the natural world. And that to me goes back to the crux of my practice, is how humans and the earth interact and how these concepts double both in the work and in nature. So here is an installation view with a few more of the works in the show. This piece is called Mermaid Ivory. These are actually bones of maybe manatees or sea turtles, but I scavenged these on Miami Beach. And I thought that they were really beautiful, and I combined them with a 3D printed skull and Swarovski crystals. And in this piece, I wanted to create a really quick narrative that the audience could quickly see in just a snapshot, as opposed to tiered panorama, where the narratives and the complexities of it unveil themselves more slowly over time. This is just a punctuated narrative, really quick. And wait, go back. And so yeah, it's supposed to be just this idea that a mermaid evaporated in front of you, and behind are her bones. These are some paintings that I also made. And this goes back to the idea of conceptual doubling. When I was spray painting the airbrushing the flames that are used inside tiered panorama in the large sculpture, I noticed that they left an after image, because the way I make them is that I'll tape them to like a backing and then spray them. And so I wanted to find a way to use this idea of recycling within my own practice. So the flames are made from recycled cardboard waste, and I paint them. And then even the overspray of the paint is then reused again to make more pieces. So there's this real sense of a material ecology that spreads out over the whole practice. Here's another painting, fire painting number 2. And of course, I'm using acrylic paints, and the whole show uses alternative lighting methods. So there are black lights, and the pieces, they don't glow this much in the show, but when you see them in person, you do see that there is a glow to the paintings. Another small painting. And here with this work, I wanted to really push home the idea of an interdisciplinary practice. So the edges of the painting is coated with coconut fiber as well as beeswax. So it really focuses in, instead of on an image, which I guess is a way that we traditionally look at a painting, this highlights the objectness of a painting. And you can see that more in this other painting. So this piece is also airbrushed, and then there's plastic cigarette lighters that are actually glued to the bottom of the canvas, as well as artificial pearls, and then also the coconut fiber and the beeswax on the edges. So again, creating an artwork that is neither sculpture or painting, but a little bit of both. And so so those are the 2 exhibitions. I kind of want to go through a few other works that are not in the shows, but can give you a sense of my sculptural practice, which, obviously the centerpiece is part of this series. So this one is Moon Effigy, Scenic Fire number 3. And this piece is the same expanding foam with canvas stretched over it, and then my messy gestural pours of paint and acrylic all over this piece, and then again the positioning of all these little flames and 3D printed materials that you see in the other works as well, or in the main work in the exhibition. This is called Scenic Fire number 2, The Sun. Scenic Fire number 1. Untitled Self-Portrait in Primordial Earth. Dreamcatcher. The Garden. And Death Bell. And that's kind of it for my introduction to my work.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I encourage everyone to, if you have an opportunity to go see the exhibition, it's on Collins. I forget the exact address, but you should make an appointment with BFI through email and go see it. It's wonderful. I was lucky enough to see it last week. So, Orlando, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your background? I know I heard that you were from Puerto Rico and then you moved to Miami at a young age.
Yeah, so a little bit about me biographically. Maybe I should stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. And you're in your studio. If you want to share where you are as well. Yeah.
Yeah, right now I'm in my studio in New York, in Brooklyn. But originally I'm from Puerto Rico. My parents are Puerto Rican, and I have a little bit of a complex life story. I was born in California, and before I was a year old, my father was in the military, so he had the opportunity to be stationed back in Puerto Rico. And so I grew up on the island on a military base. And then at the age of 11 is when my family was then moved to Miami. I grew up there. High school, I went to FIU. And then after that, I moved to Gainesville to get my MFA from UF. From there, I moved to New York, did a lot of work here. And then as of recently, I've been living back and forth between Miami and New York City. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And the last time you were here was to install this work. So you were, talk about how you, about the process of this.
Sure. So BFI and Bridge had invited me to do this exhibition in like 2019, like a long time ago. And, these things take a long time to come together. So the exhibition actually got pushed back. It was supposed to happen in 2020, but with the pandemic, obviously we couldn't have in-person shows. So I knew it was going to be a ton of work. So I had been working on it already, like cutting pieces, collecting objects, sketching, making designs. I had plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D. Like, when you're doing an exhibition and you're not living somewhere full time, you really have to pre-plan everything and, be prepared for a disaster. But so in an effort to also make the exhibition green, I decided that I wasn't gonna make anything here in New York that I couldn't drive down with me in a car. So I basically put together a huge list of everything that I would need, and I packed my car like to the brim with stuff, and I drove down from New York to Miami, and then all the works were actually built and assembled in the exhibition space.
Okay, nice. So when I was there, yes, I saw 3D printed pentagrams, starfish, the yoga lady. I saw cardboard. It looked like you were using cereal boxes for some of the flames. So it was really, really wonderful. And I love the paintings as well. And you were talking about how your work has evolved since you said when you were at FIU, you were really working in photography. Do you want to talk about a little bit more about how the sculpture has evolved since you graduated from your MFA?
Yeah, so my sculptural practice, it started off in grad school. I was focusing a lot more on found objects and really quick narratives. and kind of like the mermaid piece that you see in the show. But I for some reason, I just needed to complicate the practice more. And so that's when I came up with the idea of developing what I call material systems. I spoke about it a little bit in the talk, but the idea of a found object for me really, and what the possibilities are for it really, that's where I started to really grow my ideas. So the 3D printing opened up this whole new world because a file that exists digitally for me has the same value as an actual object in real life in 3 dimensions. And for me, again, that was this conceptual doubling with the idea of a photograph being a 2D image, a representation of a thing, versus a sculpture, which is a thing itself. And so yeah.
I have a question. I encourage everyone, if you have any question or comments, to please put them in the chat. But I do have a question about, you had mentioned your work has some science fiction elements. Do you want to talk about that role that your work plays?
Yeah, so my work, to me altogether, and I mean, I probably don't have to spell this out for everybody, but the show is a social critique. And I see that social critique as me tapping into these big meta-narratives that kind of discuss human beings and humanity. And so the idea of science fiction is one of the lenses through which I analyze these narratives. It's science fiction, metaphysics, and queer theory. So science fiction for me are really these futuristic ideas of either dystopias or utopias, whether humankind is, going in a positive direction or in a negative direction. And I find that dichotomy to be really interesting. It also ties into my interest in queer theory. I think queer theory for me, the real crux of it is trying to define what is deviance. And so I like the idea that with my work, I kind of open up this this questioning of what exists beyond the realm of science. What is the way it's supposed to be, and what is not the way it's supposed to be, the natural versus the anti-natural. And then the elements of mysticism come in because similarly, mysticism lies almost beyond the reach of science. And so there are things that can't be proven nor disproven through scientific means. And so these 3 things for me come together to create my own language and world.
I wanted to ask you about when we had talked earlier, you had mentioned your Puerto Rican background and also Miami's idea of Santeria, mysticism. If you could talk about that influence a bit in your work.
Yeah, so being from Puerto Rico, I guess it's not necessarily part of my family's religion or spirituality, but almost more ingrained in the culture is the practice of folk magic. And the way that these practices from the Caribbean can still are still seen today in my family's practices of spirituality. And what I mean by folk magic is something as simple as lighting a candle in prayer or burning incense. I really think that this is a field that has been neglected in academia and in spiritual research. But so I like to bring those ideas into my work. And going back to Santeria, I think that it's really interesting that Miami is called the Magic City. And there's actually all these forms of alternative mysticism that are being practiced here. And, it's almost like this cultural archive that really is being maintained by the people in Miami that are maintaining these practices.
Yes, I agree. I see that a lot in your work. And I think I mentioned to you when I first moved to Miami a long time ago, that was one of the first things that I noticed about the culture was all these elements of mysticism. And I had friends who are practicing Santeria or having altars in their home. And that was my first introduction to that in Miami. So I wanted to ask you also about you. I'm sorry, give me one sec. Your titles for your works are really, you have very elaborate titles for which I really appreciate, because a lot of artists do not title their work and everything is untitled. I love that you take the time to do that. Can you talk about the process or how you come up with your titles?
Yeah, so a lot of my ideas come from my meditation practice. Like I said, I have an interest in mysticism and in the metaphysical world, and so I use tarot cards as sources of inspiration, and through meditation is where I get a lot of my ideas for my sculptures as well as my titles. The title of the current exhibition, The Infinite Vision in the Ethereal Rainbows Swarming Behind My Eyelids Reveals a Beacon, is a poem which actually talks about the practice of how I form the titles and get the ideas for the pieces.
So can you talk a little bit about the processes that you're coming up with? Like, I know you meditate. How about your studio? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you listening to music, or are you
Yeah, definitely music is a huge inspiration for me. But also I read a lot of books. I watch a lot of TV. And like I said, my practice is almost this cultural mining that then I, through the work, analyze and remix.
were there any mentors that really influenced your work while you were in the university, or outside artists that influenced your work?
Yeah, I actually have some photos of some of my biggest influences, if I can share my screen
Oh,
again.
that'd be great.
Um, so first of all, these people are not in these images, but one of my two favorite artists of all time are Felix Gonzalez Torres and Ana Mendieta. Not only for their work and their interest in a lot of the same things that I'm interested in, but also just because of their own biographical narratives, almost mirror my own. They both are from the Caribbean, and then at some point in their formative years moved to the United States. And so I see transformation as being central to their practice as well. The way that Felix Gonzalez Torres treats the found object is extremely transformational. He takes, the most banal things like a light string and transforms it into visual poetry in a really ghostly way, something that barely exists inside a gallery space. And then Ana Mendieta, same thing, like, her Silhouette series of her in nature, nude, covered in natural materials, really speaks of the transformational qualities of the earth and also humans' relationship to it. But if I can show you some,
I believe they were both in Miami at one time. Ana Mendieta has a tree, I think, little Havana that she carved on, and
yeah, and Felix Gonzalez Torres actually passed away in Miami.
yes, yep.
So they both have deep ties to the city. Let me get through. Okay, artistic influences. So Chris Burden is. I just love his sculptures. I love how through the work and through material, he's also analyzing society and creating critiques of the way people live on the planet. I also, in his work, see a critique of gender in these hyper masculine pieces that he makes. Another influence is Mike Kelly, again, for his use of color, his sense of whimsy, just this really avant-garde style that, again, taps into a sense of Americana, and his ability to tease out narrative from, the most unexpected material, which is something that I strive for in my own work as well. this is another piece by Mike Kelly. Again, the artificial material mimicking a natural material, the use of dramatic lighting to create an immersive environment, a non-linear narrative being told through unconventional material. Kara Walker is another huge influence of mine. I just love her ability to seamlessly make the most grotesque aspects of American life into something just gorgeous. Her way of depicting horror with, you know, such elegance is something like it's masterful. This was a huge installation that she did at the Domino Sugar Factory in Brooklyn before it was torn down.
I remember that.
And Tetsumi Kudo. Tetsumi Kudo is a lesser known artist. He was an avant-garde performance artist and sculptor from Japan. And he made these works that also were these science fiction future dystopias, these visions of man specifically focusing on the effects of radiation on the natural environment. And that's it.
You had said Chris Burden before, and you were referencing his sculptures, but he was also a performance artist. Do you do performance? I read somewhere that you do.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Yeah, I mean, I'm an interdisciplinarian. Like, I do whatever I need to do to communicate an idea. But I actually founded a performance event here in Brooklyn called Incarnata Social Club in collaboration with the legendary and iconic Kembra Thaler. And so the project ran for a bit over a year. And it was really a stage for anybody at any level in a performance practice could come together and have a space to do whatever they wanted to do. It was very freeform, it was very experimental, but that's kind of where I started doing my own performance work, which I focused on sound art. But yeah, performance is definitely a tool in my kit.
Wonderful. So we're almost out of time, but I like to ask, what are you up to next? What's coming up for you?
You know, there's a couple of things. I think there might be just a strictly painting show in the works, where I'm going to do a few big paintings and a few drawings, works on paper, kind of going back to basics, and yeah, that's it right now.
Wonderful. Well, we have a lot of students on, so I always like to ask if you have words of wisdom that you would like to share with emerging artists or student artists that are getting ready to graduate. What would that be?
I guess if I had words of wisdom, it would be just to never stop making art. If you really want this to be your career, there's several different ways to do it. There's not just this one journey. There's many different ways to exist as a creative and to make a life out of it. Yeah.
I think that's great advice to give our new up and coming artists and students. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to get to know you, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. And again, I encourage everyone to go see the exhibition on South Beach. And I'm just gonna unmute everyone for a minute and we can just give you some virtual applause. So everyone can say hello or virtual applause, and
good job, Orlando. Woohoo!
Really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Great job. Really great work.
Really awesome.
Thank you. So
Thank you, everyone.